Tell the story.
When his own willingness falters, I will support it. When his hands are too tired to be there, I will, by my sheer will, lift his hands and make him fight.
Yes, sir!
That's the power of the tribe.
So I've known you for what, like 2 years now?
Yeah,
About 2 years. We
Yeah.
went to Undisputed Mastery. I met you there and
Yeah.
realized that you were a guy to like look up to, like a lot of wisdom, super capable, dangerous, but like behind that, the correct principles.
Yeah.
And you're pretty much a legend in the martial arts world, right? You're a black belt in Bruce Lee's martial art.
Yeah.
Which is called what?
Jeet Kune Do.
Jeet Kune Do. And you trained under DeSantis?
Inosanto.
Inosanto.
Dan Inosanto. Yeah, he was Bruce Lee's best friend
Right.
and protege, and he was the highest ranking instructor under Bruce. And when Bruce passed away, he had left Dan Inosanto in charge, and so
Yeah.
I left Guru Dan in charge. He was
Yeah.
the guy with the most experience, closest to the source, all that.
Right. And then you've trained Navy SEALs, Texas Rangers,
Yeah.
you know, some of the most elite military guys in the world.
Yeah. I worked with SIAP Tactical Group, doing contract work for those guys
Right.
during the Global War on Terror, and
Mm-hmm.
got to be a part of some amazing stuff, working with amazing American heroes.
Yeah. And then Operation Rescue Children is another thing that you guys do,
Yep.
where you train the soldiers to go out and save the people that are getting trafficked,
Yeah, that's right.
which is
So
pretty amazing. I've seen like all the stuff that you've done. I've been a part of it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's such an amazing operation.
Yeah.
So when was like the first time where you knew that you were going to do martial arts for like the rest of your life, or you knew that like this is a passion of mine for sure?
Yeah. I think that I come from rural Arkansas and a lot of poverty and a terrible education, and I was doing martial arts back then as a form of self-defense for one, but also I didn't realize at the time it was expanding my view of the world. And so by studying martial arts, I realized that there are people out there who don't look anything like me, don't speak the same language, don't worship the same God, completely different, truly foreign to a small town guy living in the backwoods of Arkansas. And so exploring martial arts gave me a way of exploring the world,
Right.
and people in it and motivations and different things, and it expanded my world tremendously. So, and then as I continued with that, I realized just how vast that was.
Right.
And then eventually I realized that this would be my college. This would be my VOTEC, if you will. It would be my apprenticeship under masters that would eventually lead me to a career and a pathway. So I didn't recognize that in the beginning, but eventually I realized, pedigree counts, just like in any other university.
Sure.
Skills, knowledge, testing, all that stuff is important.
Did your childhood kind of lead you towards that path, and like what was your childhood like?
Yeah, my childhood led me to that. My early childhood, I lived close to my grandmother and grandfather. We lived out in the middle of nowhere at the end of a dirt road that eventually became Elmore Road. And I had, my grandparents were there. I had uncles that were still at home and an aunt that was still at home. So almost big brothers and big sisters at the time. And they took care of me a lot.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were fairly stable at that point early.
Yeah.
But as time went on, they became less and less stable, and home became more and more violent and that sort of thing. And then we ended up moving around a lot. I lost that connection, that intimate connection that I'd have with my grandparents, and then eventually, everybody grows up, moves on, and by the time I was 16, I found myself alone.
Yeah.
My mom was gone. I didn't know where she was at the time. Later we reconnected, but at the time I didn't know where she was at. And my father and my little brother moved out to go live with his girlfriend. And so I ended up living in a house in the woods with no electricity, no running water.
Had to grow up fast.
Yeah, pretty quick, and obviously I had it to do it over again. It would be much easier now, but back then it was a big push,
right?
To just suddenly be alone and feel alone was a big deal.
Yeah, I can imagine being alone at 16 years old with like no father figure, no mother figure.
Yeah.
Did that like make you a more disciplined masculine man, or did you take like a bad role in some ways in that part of life where you kind of were immature because of that?
Yeah.
Because it could go both ways. Like, which
Yeah.
path did you take?
Yeah. I'd say I probably took a combination of both, right? So
Yeah.
I still had martial arts, so I still had my martial arts mentors.
Mm.
My instructor was Monty Ashley, Shodan Monty Ashley. He got his doctorate in counseling and stuff, so he was a very stable guy for me at that time. And then my training partner was 10 years older than me. He was a pastor of the local Nazarene church, obviously another great role model, very stable. So they kind of kept me from going too far off the deep end, but I was angry at the world, man. So I was even more violent. I grew up in a violent neighborhood. I'm not a violent neighborhood, but a violent household. When we moved, I ended up in violent neighborhoods. I got in a fight every day in school.
Crazy.
4th grade, I had a knife pulled on me for the first time. I fought every day. I still have a scar from getting headbutted, in a fight. And then martial arts gave me I got better at it.
Right.
And I was better at that. And so I kind of sought it out and was angry at the world. I took it out on my training partners. I took it out on other people in the classroom. I took it out on anybody who gave me any excuse in the street because I was mad. I was mad at being left alone. I was mad about being poor. I was mad about having no education. I was mad about all those things.
Sure.
And so...
like, why me? It's not fair.
Well, I don't think I felt that, or at least consciously, but but I was angry. Of
course.
And I was taking it out on the world. And but I did have some good mentors that kept me from going to prison or
What's crazy is you're kind of like the opposite of that now. Like, you're so controlled. Like, you have a very calm demeanor about you. Dangerous demeanor for sure, and masculine. But it's like you don't get any of that. Like, I've never seen you snap at all. Like, you always keep your demeanor. So when did that like flip for you? Where it
wasn't a flip. That was a grind. I realized that about myself.
Yeah.
Living with a girlfriend, punching holes in sheetrock like every other, punk kid. And so just not handling that well. And I realized I didn't have a different coping mechanism. So I had all my life when I got angry and upset about something, I went and hit the heavy bag. And so that was my release. And you don't always get to just walk away from a situation and punch a heavy bag. So I realized then, about 21, that I needed to start working on having different ways of managing what I was feeling. And about that time, I was working full time for Mr. Gibson in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I was a full time martial artist, and I was doing what I wanted to do for a living. I had my shot at the dream. I was still dirt poor. They couldn't afford to pay me anything really. So I was still living off of, almost nothing and no car, walking to work, that kind of stuff, barely eating. Yeah. But I was happy, and I was happy to be around those people and have that mentorship. And so I started then really kind of working on myself. And it's been a process.
Sure. And how long have you been training martial arts for?
40 years.
Yeah, I know we were talking about this the other day because you put social media clips out there sometimes, and there's martial artists out there that have been doing it for 10, 15 years and are putting like a lot of insight into you, kind of like making fun of you. Right. So what exactly do you specialize in? And then I also, after this, I want to go into like UFC and like how like martial arts differs from like cage fighting and why it's why what you do is a lot more realistic and
so
to talk about the worst of humanity is a very uncomfortable thing. To imagine your child being taken and sold and used over and over and over and over again multiple times a day, that's unthinkable.
This is really going on, and it's going on in a capacity and a severity that you can't imagine.
There are more slaves in the world today than ever before.
This is happening in our own backyards.
It's happening here in America, it's happening in small town America, big cities America, and of course it's happening all over the world.
The exploitation of a child is the most twisted and perverted evil thing in the world.
These operators that we support, that we raise money for, that we train, that we equip, go into the darkest places of the world where people don't have any idea that someone is even looking for them, coming for them, to free them.
It's not good enough to just pretend like it's not a big deal. And it's going to take everybody coming together and standing together to have an impact on it.
They're hope, right? That's hope. Every one of those guys. And that's what we want to focus on, is that there is hope. They're the light of this whole story.
There are people out there who are actively devoting their entire lives to solving this problem.
Their work is life and death a lot of the times. If they don't do it correctly, if they are not prepared, they sacrifice their own life for that. The thing that's different about what we're doing is the level of training, the access to information that these guys are able to get.
We train the very best, with the very best training. And so the hope is that these guys are coming. And if you are a trafficker, we're coming for you.
I don't feel like they should have to sacrifice being a father or a husband to do this job. They deserve to have families. And so when we get to help them do their work, but still come home and be a dad, that's the biggest success story to me.
If she can sit there and hope for one of our guys to come there and kick open that door and collect her and bring her home, I can stand with a group like this.
They see some of the worst things that a human being can possibly do to another human being. They're going down into like the deepest, darkest pit you can imagine. And if they can go into that pit, like, I can hold rope. And so I'm looking for other people to hold that rope with me.
This is what everything I've done in my life has been for. If you yourself can put yourself in that situation and imagine that it is somebody that you cared about, I don't think you can ever turn away from the problem again.
If you want to partner with ORC and stand with us to hold the ropes for the heroes, you can go to standwithorc.org. You can sponsor a hero, you can stop a predator, and you can save a child.
What exactly do you specialize in martial arts?
Okay, yeah. So, I studied under Dan Inosanto, still study under Dan Inosanto, and I'm a full instructor under him in Filipino martial arts and Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, and I am also certified in Mafalendo Silat, which is Southeast Asian.
Yeah, and I think the first question a lot of people ask is like, is that realistic to
so,
actual fighting in the real world?
Yeah, so, well, I would say it all boils down to the emphasis of the instructor. So you have some people who teach those arts and they only use padded sticks. They never really spar hard. They'll roll or grapple, but they're not really fighting with it. And then on the other side of that, you have guys who are really geared towards that, and that's what they're fighting. That's what they're working towards.
Sure.
And they're fighting with hard sticks, and they're making real contact in stick sparring, or even better, they're sparring with steel blades and padding. They're making real contact when they're kickboxing, and they're really choking each other on the ground, really throwing each other. So they have a different emphasis. They're more towards the application than the art. Yeah. Some people love teaching these arts, and I'd say martial arts in general, because of the cultural things that they get out of it, because it's gives me a good social circle. It's fun. It keeps me in shape.
Sure.
And then some people are all about the application.
Yeah, because I know I took karate, I think it was like freshman year, and I took 6 months of it, and we would learn all these different katas and like different ways to punch, and then when we would spar, all that stuff went out the window.
That came out.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just the most athletic person in the room that would win the fights.
Yeah, that's right. That's unfortunately, that's not uncommon for a lot of places where you have somebody who's not really focused on a particular goal, right?
It's like, am I really learning how to fight here?
Yeah, exactly. If your drills, if your sparring doesn't look like your drills and your drills don't look like your sparring, that's a clue.
Yeah.
Right. And so, obviously not everybody's doing that. And so my particular specialty is in martial arts of Southeast Asia, where very tribal based. So not militaristic, no lining up, no barking orders, but very personal, having a personal relationship with people and wanting them to be better and succeed in life and all the other things, right? So not just be able to fight. The byproduct of that is I need you to be able to survive long enough to come back and train with me again. Yeah. So martial needs to come pretty quick, right? We'll make you artistic later, but right now I need you to be able to stay alive. And so that's kind of how we focus on that. And then of course, one of my specialties is I'm a Tuhon in a martial art called Sayak Kali.
Which is dangerous.
It's very dangerous. It's an all blade, all time martial arts. And so it is really about very practical application in the beginning of violence. Now it has a great progression to personal mastery in the rest of your world. And so when you look at all the guys who are the top of the line in the system, they're all phenomenal in their own career fields outside of martial arts.
Right.
Because it really does have a progression for that, for personal mastery.
Yeah.
But it definitely has its basis in a real understanding of violence. And so those things are my specialty. And then having worked with the military for 20 years during the war, we're extremely busy and real things are happening, that made it even more so. So that's my particular specialty.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate about your strategy is like you focus on the basics, and it's super simple, and then everything works off of those basics. Because we've done events together, and it's, in the beginning, like we're learning how to block, we're learning how to throw the right punches, and then everything works off of that. Yeah. And a lot of other martial arts instructors that I've come in contact with, it's like so confusing. Well, we're going over here, now we're going over here. Like we're mastering the basics first, and then we're going to take everything off of that. Yeah.
Well, one of the problems is how people get trained in the first place. So if you have an instructor who is trained in a seminar, he goes, and a seminar is very fast paced, and it's a lot of information packed into a small time. Yeah. And then they go home, and then that's the only example of how to teach or train. So they go home and do that same thing back at home. But that training is not like that at all. I mean, that's just Guru Dan or whoever's teaching, distilling as much information as possible so that you can go home and do what you're supposed to do with it, which is grind the basics, right? And then build off those foundational motions. So, unfortunately, it's buyer beware when it comes to the martial arts world.
It seems like you're trying to develop muscle memory as fast as possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, you want to install skills as quick as possible so that they can survive, come back to you and be useful to their families. But if you give too many people too many variations and too much to think about, they can't make a conscious decision during the violent altercation about which one to choose from. So you bog down their decision-making process. Yeah. So in the beginning, you want it to be very simple, and then you want it so they can understand it. Then you give them enough reps where they install it, where it becomes now their new response. Yeah. And then when they see that coming and they feel that coming, they do the thing they've trained a million times to do without thought. Right. And all training does that, whether it's driving a car, or flying a plane, or fighting, or shooting, or anything. That's what training does. Training replaces these not very useful responses, right, with very useful responses. Yeah. And those should become more and more advanced as you go along. But you got to have a place to start. Right? Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Now, UFC, cage fighting. How does that correlate to like what you do? And like, does cage fighting is that useful for the real world? Because what you do, it's like real life situations, hand to hand, and then you go knives and you go guns as well. It seems like you're just trying to train yourself to how to become dangerous in the real world. Yeah. Like if something were to happen, God forbid, like you would know exactly what to do with the resources that you have. Yeah. So are those skills useful? Yes. Are they what you should be doing, or the emphasis of what you should be doing? Yeah. Well, maybe not. We all should be able to punch people. We should all be able to strike with any tool, right? Elbows, knees, finger jabs, headbutts, any striking tool. And we should all be able to control people. Where you're controlling people by clenching them, holding on to them, smothering punches, pushing them up against a wall or a cage or a car, or putting them on the ground and holding them down between, we're not in a matted surface, but holding them on the ground between the bathroom stall and the sink, and not letting them get back to their feet. We all need to be able to control people. Yeah. And so if we look at the things in the UFC, that's the very foundational building blocks of a one-on-one violent altercation. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people look at that and they think like those guys are like the most dangerous in the world. And in that art where they're trapped in a cage and it's one-on-one, yes, that's true. Yeah. But that altercation doesn't normally happen in real life, in a bar, on the street, where people have weapons, all that kind of stuff. Now, if to say that Khabib, right?
Right.
We take him and put him in a bar, and some guy, they have some words, and then they both kind of subconsciously agree that this is going to be a match between me and you. But as soon as that starts to happen, if that guy over there starts throwing beer bottles and or hits him, Khabib, in the back of the head with a bar stool, or stabs him in the back, or shoots his friend. I mean,
sure.
Those are all real, very real things.
Yeah.
Now, to say Khabib couldn't survive those things and is not a good enough fighter to be able to do that, I don't know him.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So
it's a degree of violence of what you're willing to go to.
Yeah, that's right. Now, would I choose Khabib over somebody with no training? Absolutely.
Of course.
I'd be like, yeah, come on, buddy, let's go. But would I choose him over somebody who's maybe got more reps in that kind of field? Maybe not.
Would you choose him if he had a gun? The other guy had a gun?
Yeah, I mean, versus somebody who's I know is carrying a gun and has a competent shooter and has been in those kind of situations before. Maybe not.
Yeah.
So we look at those things and say, yeah, everybody should be able to do all those things, but that's not enough to say this will go in the world. Well, that's all you need. Well, that's a ridiculous statement, right? So because all it takes is somebody to attack you. So we look at, there's only 4 space and time. And so if somebody hits you before your time is ready, right? So if you wait until any one of those, and I'm just using Khabib because he's a phenomenal athlete and an incredible, dangerous fighter in the ring. Of course. But if you take any one of those guys, if you step in the ring with them, I'm 56 years old. If I stepped in the ring with any one of those guys, and was like, okay, yeah, let's go, right? I'd be like, oh, that's going to be a bad day, right?
Of course.
I hope I'm getting paid no matter whether I win or lose. But you catch that guy after the fight, when he's tired, when he's dragging, when he's, going out to celebrate, and he's had two drinks in him and, all that stuff. Well, now we get real violence, right? So if you look at the way fights really happen, it's not, somebody doesn't say, hey, get ready, right? They just come up and smash you.
Very true.
Right? And they catch you when you're not ready. They catch you when you're not paying attention. So you don't get warnings. You don't go, hey, 3 months from now, this guy's going to try and kill you in an alley.
Yeah.
Or shoot you in your workplace. You don't get that. So you don't get to prepare up for it any more than you push yourself to prepare.
Right.
You don't, so you have asymmetrical start times, asymmetrical willingness, right? So that guy knows he's about to try and kill you. You don't, right? You also have asymmetrical force. So that guy brings a gun. You didn't realize he was bringing a gun.
Exactly.
You go like that, he shoots you dead.
Yeah.
So those are the things that people don't train, right? The very things that are the most likely to have, that kill people, that really ruin people's lives or end their lives, are the things that they don't train.
Yeah, exactly. Because most of the world right now, or people that are getting into martial arts, it's jiu-jitsu, it's kickboxing, it's boxing, and they kind of leave like the weapons out of the occasion.
Yeah.
But if you want to become, say if you're a father at home, or you just want to protect your family,
right?
Like training knives, training guns is probably better off than training the other martial arts, right?
Well, I think you need all of them, right?
True.
So, because to say, well, I'll just carry my gun. Well, then the guy blindsides you on the side in the parking lot, or you're standing at the urinal like an idiot, because don't use urinals.
Yeah.
It's just a thing. Use a stall every single time. When you're standing in the urinal, the guy hits you from the back, smashes your head into the concrete, and now you're trying to find your gun. He's already stomping on your face. So if you don't have good situational awareness, if you don't realize that these are dangerous times, dangerous places, dangerous people, if you don't carry tools, if you don't have a wide variety of skills, then it's very, very difficult to survive those kinds of things.
Right.
So to rely on any one thing, whether it's your gun, your knife, or your grappling, or your striking, is an immature viewpoint.
Right.
You should be able to do all of those things. So you should be able to do and now you don't have to be the world's greatest UFC guy, right? But you should be able to, move yourself on the ground, not get held down by somebody who's just bigger and stronger than you. You should be able to hold down somebody who's bigger and stronger than you. You should be able to strike with enough power and enough force to end the altercation. You should be able to take enough force. So if people are big and strong and they're wailing, you should be able to know how to manage that force.
Yeah.
And then when things go from a simple fist fight to a lethal force encounter, meaning there's 5 of them and they're going to stomp you until you're unconscious and then stomp your face on the curb, or they have bats, or they have knives, or they have guns, or whatever. And so So we need to expand our understanding of what violence is.
Right.
And violence is not what happens in the ring. That's a snapshot of violence, right? Violence is what people in the cartel are doing to other people.
Yeah.
Right. Violence is what criminals do to each other. Violence is what people do to people in the dark. Right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing pretty about that. There's nothing heroic about that. You know, and it's dangerous, and it doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
So, and to say, well, I'm just going to go and, you know, strike them or submit them or anything is arrogant.
Yeah.
And unrealistic and childish. So, but if a guy pulls a blade on you, all he has to do is touch you one time and you're dead.
Right.
Right. Now that's not a guarantee, but it's certainly far more likely than, you know, the opposite.
Sure.
Right. And we can see it a million times, right? You can watch a million videos of guys getting, you know, one shot in the neck, and you know, you see the look on his face. He realizes he's done and takes 2 steps and takes a knee.
Yeah.
You know, and spends the next.
Yeah, awareness is definitely the.
Yeah. And recognizing that, hey,
right.
you know, this is one of the situations where I'm not just going to box this guy. This is a bad deal, right? And you think I'm going to take this guy to the ground. The next thing you know, he's stabbing you.
Right.
You know, we just saw that with the Marine. The Marine, you know, trying to help. He's a good Samaritan, trying to help break things up, and the guy, he's on top, he's standing up, working the guy. Yeah. The guy pulls a blade and gashes his thigh open. It's a huge thing. Fortunately for the Marine, it was on the outside of his thigh, not the inside. But
we used the whole analogy yesterday when we were talking about like driving a car. Like, it's not just about being a good driver as far as like being able to drive the car with the wheel and the gas, but it's also, you know, what's going to be coming in the future. Like if this car is coming in and weaving in and out of traffic, maybe don't go near him, or like don't go right next to a tractor trailer that like might be shifting lanes. So it's about, you know, and also knowing like where you can go if something does happen. It's the same thing in the real world with danger. Yeah,
exactly right. And you want to think about what those things are, and then pre-plan what you want them to be. Like, I'm going to make this as intelligent plan as I possibly can. This is what I'm going to do if this happens.
Right.
And I'm going to do that when I'm not scared, when I'm not amped up, any of those other things. And now that I've got a logical plan, then I'm going to rep that until it becomes subconscious, so that when it happens, I don't have to be creative. I don't have to come up with some amazing answer under pressure.
Right.
And so that my first rep isn't real life.
Sure.
Right? I've already done this a million times.
Already got punched in the face.
I've already gotten punched in the face.
Yeah.
I've already had somebody in front of me stomp on their brakes and collide into someone. And I see that, and I don't just panic, stomp on the brakes, go into an uncontrolled skid, lock my hands, and we slam into them too. I actually now go, oh, brakes. I see their brake lights. I shift my eyes to the open line, and I steer into that open line, and I avoid the collision.
Yeah.
You don't do that accidentally. You do that because you planned that ahead of time. You burned reps on that ahead of time. You practiced it, so when it happened, you did it.
Right. So what are some simple things that men at home that are listening to this and they want to become more capable, dangerous, stronger for their family? What are some easy things that they can do to become more aware, become more capable, become more dangerous?
I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
The easy answer is training, and that's not easy.
Right.
But so my answer to everything is training. You know, people are like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? All the answers you're asking for are in training, and they become self-evident, self-correcting.
What does that training look like?
Well, you need to do those things we're talking about, right? You need to go someplace where you're going to get to hit things, and people are going to hit you.
Right.
You don't have to be in an MMA gym where they're, you know, crushing you into the ground every single day because you're working with other professional fighters. You don't need that.
Yeah.
Right. But you need to go someplace where people are going to pressure you a little bit, right? And where they're going to get on top of you and trying to hold you down and make you have to get up and work and struggle, and that is the foundations of all that. And then you need to study an art that's going to have some kind of weaponry, some impact weapons and some edged weapons. Kali is a great example of those things. But you have to choose the right Kali school, or you end up someplace where all they do is use soft sticks. So you gotta, and foam knives, right?
Right.
So you got to go someplace where they're pushing you a little bit, because impact weapons are realistic. Hammers, pipes, tire tools, you know, those things are still a thing. And then edge weapons, you have to deal with that. You know, whether it's flathead screwdriver or box cutter or or a knife. And then you have to do some firearms training.
Yeah.
And you can take, and nobody, well, very few people are doing all of those. That's what we refer to as integrated combatives, where you're doing all of that.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people just get a gun and they call it a day.
They do. And that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
Right? It's like saying, well, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. If a guy comes at me with a knife, I'll just throw him to the ground and I'll stuff his arm and I'll break his arm and he won't have a chance. So that's a cop-out. And people who are skilled should know better. They should understand that.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to do all those things because we don't know what the theater of operation is going to look like, right? So you're in your home, you're in your sweatpants and t-shirt, no shoes, and you're kicked back watching TV, and you hear somebody kick your back door open, and you're like, okay, well, here we are. You hear people running through your house or screaming, and your kids screaming, and whatever. So what's the situation for that? Another is you're walking out of the movie theater, the Bruce Wayne thing. You walk out of the movie theater with your kids. There's a guy there or two guys there. What are you going to do with that? Road rage situation. A guy runs you off the road, gets out, starts coming to your car. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Those are all very common things, right? That happen every day in America and every day all over the world. And people still get killed over road rage. They still get killed over arguments. They arguments with their neighbor, shoveling snow. Snow blower blows the snow out of my driveway into yours. The guy goes, gets a gun, comes back and murders everybody in the street. I'm like, your neighbor could be 3 days off their meds, and next thing you know, they're trying to kill you and your family. Normally, they're a great person, but 3 days off their meds, they're crazy and unpredictable. So our job is to be able to manage all of those circumstances, and that's going to take more skill than just punching and kicking and grappling.
Yep. So you say it's our job as a man to do all those things.
I do.
But it seems like in this day and age, a lot of guys, a lot of men, they don't think so. Like we have a lot of feminine men, a lot of weak men. Yeah. What is your opinion on, the weak men in society, and how do we get them to become strong men?
Well, first there has to be some willingness, right?
Yeah.
And so, we talked about this briefly, but there's the hierarchy of needs. As long as people have, I think humans in general are looking for a battle to fight, right?
Right.
Particularly men are looking for a battle to fight, a dragon to slay. And in our society, or any society where you have shelter provided for you, security provided for you, food and water provided for you, all the things that it takes to survive. So you can actually live very comfortably just based on all the things, the wonderful things that our society provides for you. Have the basic job and you're going to be fine. Even if you don't, the government will take care of you. So what that does is it steals that battle. It's from a lot of people. It steals the drive from them because they kind of have everything they want or everything they need. And so they end up creating dragons to battle. Yeah. Right? And so they end up creating problems with society, so now I'm going to wage war against my brothers. I'm going to wage war against society or some ideal or some seeming injustice. But if we go back a little bit in time where you had to work with me because if we don't cut enough wood, we'll both starve together, to death, or we'll freeze to death this winter. Yeah. I have to hunt with you. You have to hunt with me because our families will starve in the winter. When those needs weren't taken care of, we had to be more cooperative, right? Yeah. So I think that our society has created that because a lot of things are provided for people these days.
Easy times.
It's easy, right? This goes back to that saying, right? Easy times. So, so I'd say that for people who are on the edge of that right now, I'd say that we have to realize that it is our job to protect ourselves. It's no one else's job. Just like it's no one else's job to come and balance your checkbook for you or check your refrigerator or make sure you're not, that you're eating right, that you don't have 20 gallons of ice cream in there and, nothing but bacon and ice cream in your refrigerator. That there's not anybody else's job to make sure you sleep at night or that you show up for work on time. Right. Those are all parts of being a responsible adult. And along with that is taking care of your own personal security. Yeah. And then you realize, well, I kind of like this person. I'm also probably should be in charge. I would be I would feel bad if something happened to them in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would step in front of them and try and defend them.
Yeah.
Okay, well now you're good. Now you've expanded your role. And so now you realize, it's also my job to take care of people that I care about. And then you expand that to your family, you expand that to people who are innocent and incapable. So you got your children, you got your elderly, right? And so everybody goes, yeah, we should all defend them, right? And then eventually it boils down to somebody you don't even know. And we see that when people are drowning in the river and somebody jumps in and risks their life and sometimes gives it away, right? In an effort to try and save that person that they don't even know.
Right.
Or, runs into the burning building or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there is something about us that is intrinsic, that it is supposed to be how we are as protectors. And it is our role. So if that's part of our role, to not just provide, but also to protect,
right,
then we should get better at that.
Yeah. In simple terms, in your definition, what is a man?
Well, that's a great term. Well, should we start biologically? I mean, there's concerns about that, questions about that. But so obviously I would start with that, basic biology. God only created Adam and Eve.
Right.
And everything else comes from that, right? So I start with that.
Right.
But, and I would say, if we're talking about that, let's go with the idea that there is no lesser gender, right? So females are just as critical as males,
right?
And they're not if they're not supposed to be. Females are not supposed to do what men do, and men are not supposed to do what females do. They are two roles that are unique, and they're both incredibly important.
100%.
And they support each other. So it's not like the women support the men. The men are also supporting the women, right? And so they're equally important. They're equally critical. They're equally difficult, and necessary in society. Now there's a kind of like a Venn diagram. There's a part where they cross over, right? Where there's some crossover, and so some women can do that, and some men can do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that can't, or people like want to say that women shouldn't be whatever, or men shouldn't be whatever. But there's definitely in our world, there's definitely environments or definitely roles for each one of those in our environment.
Exactly.
And it's a natural thing.
Yeah. You
don't see it anywhere else where those gender roles get reversed. And one's not more important than the other.
Yeah.
So and in that Venn diagram, protection comes under both. So a woman cannot go, that's the man's job. Can't do it. Because what happens when the man's at work and the woman's shopping with the kid?
Right.
Right. If you look at how that works, if you got the woman who's a provider, who's a caregiver, and she's taking care of the kids, and the man is, let's say, working in the oil field, incredibly dangerous, incredibly hard.
Sure.
And she's home taking care of the three kids. Incredibly hard, incredibly stressful, incredibly challenging. Well, while he's out, her job now becomes the protection of the kids.
Yeah.
Not just that they don't choke, but somebody doesn't abduct them in the park or run over them in the parking lot. So there's a crossover where both people have to be responsible providers, right?
Yeah.
Of security. So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the biggest lessons I've learned from you from these events is the whole stages of life, from child, squire next.
Yeah, that's right.
And then warrior, knight, king, sage. Yeah. Can you explain this chart? Obviously, we don't want to take super long.
Sure.
But so there's different stages of life depending on where you're at. Yeah. And I guess we all probably want to be kings and sages at one day.
Eventually, yeah.
Right. So can you explain that chart to us?
Yeah. So it's just something. The hero's journey is a very common idea.
Yeah.
And the stages of that, and I just started teaching it this way because it's very martial and people understand it.
Exactly.
Right. The people that I'm speaking with. So we start with children, and children are innocent, and we want to keep them innocent. We don't want to scare our children. We don't want to steal their innocence. That's a very special time. They have no responsibility other than being children, right? And so you want to leave that alone. Now, when they're old enough where they can start to take on some responsibility and start to we start to give them some pressure. Then they become squires, right? And the difference is a child had no schedule other than eating, sleeping, and napping and playing, right? And so very natural cycles.
Sure.
Now with a squire, all of a sudden they wear a uniform, right? They're actually flying a color, a flag, a banner, wearing colors of the house, whatever it is.
Yep.
They're supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time. They have responsibilities now, say cleaning out the horse stall, brushing down the horses, polishing armor, whatever it is, right? But those are real tasks that are important and need to be done. And if they don't do them, they don't get done. So they got to be good at it. If they do that well, while they're doing that, they're learning from a knight. So they're looking up to someone who is hopefully teaching them a code, right? A moral code, a social code, a behavioral pattern, behavioral code. And so they're looking up to him as the example of what to do. And they get to see that knight exemplify these ideals, this ethos. They get to see him prepare for battle. They get to see him go to battle,
right?
Because they're not back home. They're actually there watching the battle. And they get to see deeds of heroism, right? And they get to see how that knight handles winning, and they get to see how that knight handles losing. And they see real consequences. They see that. And they're learning all that along the way. And if they do that well, then they themselves grow up and they become knights, right?
Yeah.
And so now they become knights. And now the difference there is they actually have skin in the game, right? So now they're putting their own lives at risk. Now they answer to a king, right? Now they have to fulfill a mission that maybe they don't even agree with.
Right.
They have consequences. It's still a somewhat limited role. They still have they have a much greater understanding of how the world works. Their job is to raise the next squires and teach them the way, but also to actually carry out the will of the king, and do that at great risk to themselves. Sometimes they don't see the larger picture because they're knights, and the larger picture is something they have intel that they don't get. And sometimes they're asked to do something that they can't win, right? So, like, I know I can't win this, but it's going to be good for the greater good. My sacrifice could be good for the kingdom, and those sort of things. So those are things we would expect to see from knights. And so when you see knights, we see people who are exemplifying the best in humanity, right? Self-sacrifice, hard work, discipline, loyalty, all those things. So that's why we love to see stories about people who do that. Military guys, law enforcement guys, all that stuff. They're all heroes. And what they're doing is they're exemplifying in the worst possible scenario that we can imagine, which is war.
Right.
Right. That's the worst thing we can imagine is war, all the atrocities, all the horrible things that happen.
Yep.
In that darkest, blackest environment, we see man rise to be the very best that man can be.
Exactly.
And we all admire that. We all respect that. We all look up to that. And so that's when that. Now, in the middle of all that, there'll be times when things are horrible and difficult, and all the knights will turn to one guy and be like, what do we do? What do we do, Zach? And that guy will be the guy who rallies everybody, who pushes everybody, motivates everybody, and wins the day.
The king.
Eventually, he becomes the king, right? At that point, he's just a knight. He's in the field with them. But eventually, when it comes time for there to be a new king, everybody goes, well, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I owe Zach my life 100 times over. And, I'm here because I follow him, because that guy, I believe in him. And so eventually he becomes the natural choice. Yeah. And he, because of his deeds, because of his loyalty and all other stuff, becomes the next king, right? Now, if he can't become the king there, he goes and creates a kingdom of his own. And so he becomes the king. Now he's got all the experience. All of his knights love him, admire him, and look up to him. When something happens, now he has a bigger picture. Now he answers to everybody in the kingdom. He doesn't just answer to his wife or his king, but he answers to the peasants of the family, peasants of the kingdom who are going, we don't have any food, right? These people from an invading kingdom keep coming over and killing my sheep and stealing my stuff and stole my daughter.
Right.
The king answers that, right? So he has a huge responsibility, far more to any one individual or any one team, right?
Yeah.
So now he has a bigger picture and a bigger area of responsibility. And at every one of these stages, it's important to understand that you change uniforms, right? There's a rite of passage. A squire becomes a squire. A kid becomes a squire. He puts on a uniform, he accepts responsibilities and an oath. When he gets promoted to a knight, he puts on a different uniform. He wears the armor of a knight. He accepts an oath. and now wears the garments of a knight.
Sure.
And then and the responsibilities. Then he gets promoted to king, and now he puts on a crown, right? He takes a new oath,
right,
and that sort of thing. And so, and there's a rite of passage at every one of those things, not just some ceremonial thing, but a true rite of passage that changes a person from being a child to being a squire, from being a squire to being a knight, or a warrior.
And then after king is sage, and sage is kind of like a mentor, so to speak, to the king.
So when he can no longer put on his armor and draw his sword and mount his horse and lead his warriors into battle, he's no longer an effective king, right? And so, because kings should be warriors. And when he can't do that anymore, it's time to him to pass that crown to someone else, and he changes his armor to robes. And now he becomes a sage. He still knows everything about everyone. He knows everything about that kingdom, those people, this crop, this cycles, these people, political intrigue. He knows all of it. And so he's still incredibly valuable to the king because he had a lifetime of experiences and relationships. And so his job now is to be the wise counsel to keep the king from being emotional or making decisions that, hey, I tried that once. Guess what? This is terrible.
Right.
This is where it leads. Or, yeah, that's a good idea. And of course, the king can take that or not. But that wise sage counsel is critical in any kingdom or organization.
And then is it legend after that?
So if you do it right?
Yeah.
If you do it right and you live your life correctly and you've done all these things,
right,
and you've been an effective sage and led that well, then when you step over your life, you become a legend. And so you become larger than the individual deeds of your life. You become iconic. And
where do you think most people end up, like they end at that stage in today's world?
Unfortunately, there are still a great many people who are still children. They're still children in full-grown bodies.
Grown men that shave.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're grown children that shave. Yeah. They don't accept responsibility. They don't show up where they're supposed to be on time. They won't accept responsibility for their actions, words, or deeds. They won't put any skin in the game, right? And so, well, those are all childish, behaviors. You don't get what you want, you throw a fit, you whine, you cry, you say it's not fair, all those things. Well, that's all silly. That's what children do.
Right.
Right. Adults take responsibility and step up to all that. And so, so I'd say that most people, a lot of people in today's generation, unfortunately, in your generation, we see a lot of adult children, grown children. And then you see people when they get children, they get married, they get children, it forces them into this other role.
Yeah.
Right. So now all of a sudden they're thrust into this, and maybe they don't have the tools to do it. Because they didn't have good mentors, they didn't have good sages, they didn't have somebody lead them the way, they didn't do all the steps, they didn't take the rites of passage to actually earn that, other than they, got a job and then got a girlfriend and they got pregnant, right?
Yeah.
And so then you find people who are not great parents because they haven't done that effectively themselves.
Yep.
So you can get stuck in any one of those areas, right? You can get stuck in the warrior role, right? And not want to step into the king role. Right? I like being the warrior. I'm great at this. I don't want to do politics. I don't want to work here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ride behind a desk. Well, those are the natural evolutions of that, right? A king sits on a throne. He may not sit behind a desk, but in essence, it's very similar. When he's running the country, that's really where he's at.
Running the business, running the country.
That's right. Right. Running the family, whatever it is. And so you need to move out of those roles if you're going to be well-rounded, if you're going to be truly effective. Yeah.
Where do you think you are right now?
I'm a king in my own kingdom, right? In my own organization and in my family. I am training children to become squires, training squires to become warriors. I've been fortunate enough to train warriors for the last couple of decades. And I've gone through some warrior sides of myself.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the king stage. Will eventually become the sage. If I live long enough and I do it right, I'll eventually become a sage.
I would say you're a sage in some situations.
Yeah.
I mean, at UM, at Principal Savage. Yeah. Like definitely a sage. That's where it kind of gets confusing because it's laid out so nice, but like in today's world, like how do I know where I am? Like where would you say I am? Yeah.
Well, I would say you're definitely in the warrior phase of your life, right?
Okay.
So, but you're. Again, I don't know you super well, right? We've only known each other a couple of years.
Yeah.
But warriors are looking for war, right? They're looking for something to battle, some war to wage, right? Some battle, some demon or a dragon to slay.
Right.
And I think that you're in that where you found some dragons that you want to slay, and you're beginning to direct efforts in that way. And we'll see how that result pulls off, right? How you do that.
Right.
And a lot of times we realize, as we do things, we realize, oh, this isn't a worthy battle. This isn't worth my time, my energy, my effort. This isn't enough. And that was easy. That was not enough. I want more. And so we're just going from battle to battle. And so you're not just a warrior and then a king. You become an more and more experienced warrior. So you have battle after battle after battle. And after every battle, your armor's dented and you're bloodied, right? If it was a good, worthy battle.
Right.
Because if you're fighting battles that are unworthy, that are unchallenging, you're not a warrior, you're a bully. So you want battles that are truly going to be a push.
Of course.
Right. And goals and efforts and things like that. And so I'd say that you're a young warrior who's going through his stage of gaining enough experience to become the seasoned, old, battle-hardened warrior.
Yeah. What do you think the rite of passage would be to become a king? Like, when do you step over that line?
Yeah, how do you know, right?
Yeah, how do you know?
So there you have some things like in Sayakali, we have a council, right? And you have deeds that you have to accomplish, right? These rites of passage get acknowledged by the whole tribe, the council, the whole tribe. Not everybody does that, right? It used to be, well, I graduated college. That's my rite of passage. Now I get a job.
Right.
Right? I buy a house. Those are rites of passage. One of the first rites of passage now is people get their driver's license. And people even avoid that. I don't need it. You know, you got 18-year-olds who don't have a driver's license. What's wrong with you, man?
Yeah.
I was driving when I was 14. So everybody's looking for those. And so you're going to try and find out what those are, because they mean different things for different people, right? Some people make that on family. Some people base that on business or financial status,
right?
Things like that. But you definitely want to have as clearly defined target as you possibly can.
Right. I want to go into Operation Rescue Children,
sure,
which is basically you train the soldiers to go out and save the children. How did you get involved in that, and why? Like, why are you passionate about that?
Well, we got involved with that because a guy who was working overseas, he was living overseas, was back here in America doing some fundraising for his mission overseas. He got in touch with my partner in ORC, Keith Wagner. Keith Wagner. And we set up, he realized that, hey, my people overseas could use some help. They are getting assaulted, in their line of work of rescuing children from brothels and things like that, trying to help people in these third world countries. And here in America, we have police and tons of support. In a lot of countries, they don't have any of that. There's literally no place to go and tell people.
Sure.
And even if you did, it wouldn't do any good. So, and that's where they were at. And so they asked us to go over there. So we traveled overseas to their country and worked with their team and helped them and gave them protocols and training. And we saw what the battle was like that they were facing and got to know them as humans. And we were like, man, this is, everybody kind of knows it's going on. But when you look at it and you realize the staggering battle that's going on, and it's going on just right there, just right in your own neighborhood, right in your own town.
And most people have no clue.
No clue. And it's happening right here in your city.
Yeah.
It's happening at every major sporting event, every major concert, anything like that that's going on just right there. And if you could open your eyes to it, you would start to see it. And so that's what happened to us. My wife and I went, Keith and his wife went. We did that whole thing and realized this is a real problem. And I saw my next dragon, right? So I was like, yep, that is a battle worth fighting.
Yeah.
And I can fight this dragon for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I remember there was an interview. I was interviewing you for this video, and I think you said something along the lines like, everything I've done in my life was for this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All my martial arts training that I've done, all the experience with the military, everything I've done has given me the skill sets and the experience to be able to do something and bring something to ORC that they didn't have anywhere else.
Yeah.
So that became our niche.
How severe is the situation actually? Sex trafficking, children, women, even people just for slavery. A lot of people think slavery was ended during, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln times or whatever. How severe is the situation?
Well, I mean, if you look at that time frame, right, when the slave trade from Africa to North America, Central America, and South America, which Central and South America had much larger amount of slave trade than North America. They had more slaves down there than we did. At the height of that, when that was all legal, before America decided we're going to ban that and we're going to work with England to stop the slave trade, because that's what happened. We sent our Navy over there and barricaded the whole African coast and said no more slaves will come in or out, us in England. So we didn't just stop slavery in America at that time, we stopped slavery in the world. But at that height of all of that, we have more slaves today in the world than we did at the height of legal slavery.
And why isn't this like on the media all the time, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a serious issue. It's probably the most evil thing in the world.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's first off, it's ugly, right? And people don't want to look ugly in the face. When we talk about human trafficking, it's easy to assume that that's someone else, that's some third world country, that's never going to happen here, all that stuff. But as soon as they start realizing, oh man, that's right here in my little town, that's right here in my city, that's right on the highway where I drive back and forth, then we'll start to see some change.
Right.
But it is a massive thing. It's all over the world. It's not just in some third world country. It's not just on the border. It is literally in your town. And it's not just people in third world countries who are desperate and get taken advantage of, although that is a large number of them. It's middle America.
Yeah, I think it's $150 billion business.
Yeah.
I don't know if I stand corrected.
Yeah.
But Sound of Freedom, that movie, it kind of goes into all those details. It really puts things in perspective for you.
Yeah. It certainly is that. But it's also, like I said, middle America. It's
sure.
It's some girl who does something for her boyfriend, and then he uses, gets a shot of her in just her bra on his phone, and then he uses that to leverage her, and now he's blackmailing her into doing something, and that girl gets tricked into doing things and forced into doing things she would never do.
Sure.
And she's living at home with her parents, and her parents have no clue. They just notice something's wrong with her. She's down. It's different. But they don't realize what's really going on.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they watch porn, right?
Sure.
Do you think watching porn and, going on those sites, do you think that's supporting the problem?
I think that's definitely a type of human exploitation, right? So, prostitution is, and let's face it, pornography is a form of prostitution. They're having sex for money. And that has been a problem forever.
Right.
Well, people say it's the world's oldest profession, right? And so, but no one would choose that path if they could, right? No one would choose that if they could have an alternate career, an alternate way of providing for their families, of having a successful career, of all that stuff. I don't believe. Now maybe there's some, but who would do that because they want fame or whatever.
Yeah,
right? We can deal with whatever psychosis that is. But
there's also like minor leagues too, where like Instagram models, and then you go OnlyFans, and then you kind of go into the pornography. So there's like even before pornography, it's already starting.
Yeah. And so I think that that market is part of the same problem that we would see that would lead to many other issues.
Exactly.
Whether it's drugs or it's abuse or whatever. And the science is very clear. If you look at Andrew Huberman, talk about the drawbacks of the dopamine cycle that happens to young men when they watch too much pornography and all the other things, and then the relationship issues because they think that this is what it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
This is the way an intimate relationship between a man and a woman is supposed to be, and how flawed that idea is.
Right.
So I don't think it's a positive thing for our society. I think it's a problematic thing. I think it's also a gateway to many other things.
Of course.
So, Yeah.
What does your faith mean to you?
Oh, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean,
like, how would you explain your faith to somebody?
Yeah, that's a more difficult, I guess. I think that eventually we get to the point where we go, why? What's this all about? You know, it's got to be more than me. What else is there? And I teach people all the time, you got to answer some series of questions if you're going to be a successful human. And one of the first questions you got to come to terms with is, what happens to me when I die? Right? And if you don't come to terms with that, you live your whole life in fear of dying. Right? And so every decision you make in your life is about trying not to die. And some things are worth dying for. Sure. Some risks are worth taking.
Nope.
But if I'm so afraid of dying, I won't take those risks. I won't do those things. Right? So you got to answer the question, what happens to me when I die? And so it's not just a comfort that when I do pass on, because I'm obviously going to step over someday. But it's also comfort while I'm here, right? Because I realize that I believe that in every person is a piece of God, right? And so my job is to be a good example of that and to help those people find their way to that. And I think that, and people would say, well, but you're violent. You stab people with knives, that kind of thing. And all I would say is God uses all of us to our talents, right? So,
sure.
But I think that it's a guiding force for me and for my wife in how we interact with our families, how we interact with our community, what we believe our goals and missions are for why we're here, and so that we can be better examples of His will and better stewards of what He's given us.
And you're Christian?
I am.
Yeah. Jesus?
Yeah. Yep. Believe in Jesus. That's
yeah.
It.
Yeah.
Yep. The whole
thing. Yep.
What would you have said if I was, no, I'm a Buddhist? Oh, wow, that's not where I thought that was going to
go. In a lot of ways, they are similar in a lot of principles, but there's obviously huge differences too.
Huge, yeah. There's a lot of, if we look at morality, a lot of religions teach a version of morality,
absolutely,
so that we can just interact well with humans and all, and live harmoniously with our brothers and sisters. But I believe that there's more to that. To a religion with God than just being a moral character. There's a spirituality aspect that I don't think those other things
I know we were
really
talking about the other day, like you kind of went through a stage where you kind of like researched all of them. Buddhism, Islam, and then I guess the historical evidence pointed towards Christianity. And how like Jesus is our savior and how it leads with forgiveness and love and all that.
Right.
But you also just kind of look at the world and you look at all the holidays that like Easter, resurrection of Christ, Christmas, Jesus' birthday. You even look at like things like Santa, like you switch the letters around, it's Satan. There's even something to do with Easter with that. You look at the year that we live in, I'm pretty sure it's after death of Jesus Christ. You look at all these things,
7-day
and it's
work
like
week, all that
even like a lot of people they just say Jesus like when they have like road rage.
It's
like why?
Yeah.
So I just look at all those things, and those are just like little hits.
Culturally, Christianity has been around for so long. People don't realize how much Christianity permeates their life and where they're at. Now, I also am consciously aware that we talked about this. I'm a cultural Christian, meaning I was born in America. I was raised by Christians. I went to Rock Creek Baptist Church, with my grandparents. I realize that culturally I'm a Christian, and just like if I was born in Afghanistan, I'd culturally be a Muslim. But that wasn't. I'm not a Christian now because of that. Because I went through a time when I researched other religions, when I studied other ideas and spiritual beliefs, and I came back to Christianity and said, nope, that's the one that makes the most sense to me, based on my education and my study and all that stuff. And I'm a big fan of apologetics, like Stephen Meyer and the guys, Ken Ham, the guys behind the Creation Museum and the Ark exhibit and all those things, scientists who are using their scientific
even science, archaeology,
to look at it and go, well, this all matches the
exactly. They can't disprove it.
So I'm a big fan of that.
That makes sense. Cool. What purpose do you think God has given you?
Well, I I think that's my job here to make more people more competent and more capable of defending themselves, their loved ones, and the innocent around them.
That simple?
That's simple.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
If you could relive one experience in your life, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question. That's a good question. Well, I don't believe that if we go back, and I don't think I could go back and change anything. Because if I went back and changed anything, I would change who I am now.
Exactly.
And I am the result of all the good and bad decisions that I went through. So I would like to go back and relive some beautiful moment, you know.
Yeah, say if you could just like be like, all right, I'm gonna dream about this tomorrow night, and you kind of just go. It's almost like you're reliving it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's interesting. I woke up last night dreaming about my grandmother, and so June Elmore, who was just a beautiful soul. So would I go back and spend relive a conversation with her, or relive a conversation with my instructor Chris Syak? It would be something along those lines. Yeah. Cool. Just to relive that one of those beautiful moments with those people that I loved and that loved me, and that'd be good.
I love that. What's the craziest martial arts story that you have? Like, if you're allowed to say, probably a lot of them you're not allowed to talk about, but maybe something with knives or something, like some activity that you're like, I don't know if I want to actually do that, because I know some of the stories.
Yeah. I will say that Syak Kali has given me plenty of opportunity to expand my understanding of blade work, and it's challenged me in ways that nothing else has challenged me. Nothing else in my life has challenged me like that. Some of the training sessions, I was like, man, this is dangerous. People could really get hurt. I got warnings from other people outside of the system. Hey, those guys are crazy. That that kind of thing. They'll stab you. They don't care. That kind of thing, and that just made me go, I want to see. But ultimately, all of those things that we did, and that we still do, every time, I may have been scared to death going into that training exercise.
Sure.
Every time I finished, I was like, that is the greatest thing I've ever done. Everyone needs to do that. That was amazing. That changed who I am.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And so every one of those pushes, rites of passage, if you will, were tremendous for me and helped me as a man grow and become more capable, more confident, more convicted in who I am and what I'm doing. And so I can't say that it's any one particular thing, as much as it has been in my journey of Syak and being in there.
Yeah.
And dealing with all the intended barriers to training, because some of the barriers in Syak are intended, right? We set those in place as stopgaps to prevent certain, things, people from getting information they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And so, but working my way through that whole thing has been a monumental thing. And, but to say any one particular thing.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know, like when we, Undisputed Master, after we get out of the ring with the black belts, we're boxing, and obviously it's a controlled environment, protection, or a Kali, like last time. You never get out of there and be like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. Like, you're scared to death when you walk in, but when you come out, you feel like I'm
It'd be hard to say enough to show respect, enough to convey what they do for us.
The main mission behind this event is to help men end the suffering that they're living in every day.
It took me from a life where I would settle for being average, and it completely flipped the script on that.
This event is for hungry men who know that something isn't right, but have no idea how to snap out of it.
Anybody that's struggling with, why am I here? What am I doing? What's my purpose? I don't want to be on my deathbed going, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that.
I had this huge emptiness, I had this huge darkness that was unresolved in my heart, and the people I've met through this program who won't quit on me have helped me harness that.
I've come from a long line, a lot of years of addiction and manipulation, and the brothers here, they don't care what your past is like. They will welcome you with open arms.
What I got out of it was an eye-opening experience. I was holding back a lot of anger in my life, and it affected the ones I loved, but I didn't even realize that.
I came in as a shell of a man, thinking I was doing things right, and I was absolutely bullshitting myself. My brothers helped me realize that, which completely changed the direction of my family.
You know, I came in kind of scared and kind of nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen, which was great. I can 100% back up that this will fix your mindset. It'll reset your mindset.
To really be masculine like that these days, you have to search for it.
Unfortunately, there's so many men out there that are just little boys that shave.
We need men to learn how to be men.
We're going to push you physically, mentally, emotionally, because that's what's necessary.
Alone, you will only get so far.
When his own willingness falters, I will support it. When his hands are too tired to be there, I will, by my sheer will, lift his hands and make him fight. Yes, sir! That's the power of the tribe.
Bring your baggage, bring all the stuff that you're dealing with, just bring that with you.
Life is ending 1 minute at a time.
It's never too late to change.
If you've ever thought, you know what, there's more than just this. If you wake up at night wondering if you have what it takes, and you're looking around surveying your life knowing that there's got to be more. Somehow you've given up on your dreams. You're tolerating things in your life that you know are a compromise to who you're really called to be. Then you owe it to yourself to come to Undisputed Mastery. There's no other event like it in the world.
$1,000,000.
Yeah. I will say that working in SOC Tactical and working with our Special Forces guys, I have hundreds of reps of sparring in bathrooms that I intentionally wet the floor down, and we sparred in that bathroom, and broke walls off those little side walls off the urinals, and beat people up against walls. I've been thrown out of moving vehicles in sparring drills, scenario training.
Crazy.
Thrown guys drug them out of moving vehicles. I've been thrown down stairwells hundreds of times. Fought guys, tried to throw them down stairwells. Shot with Sims 1,000,000 times, shot people 1,000,000 times.
Yep.
I've been in fights training sessions in bathrooms, in hotel rooms, and all that stuff that we just used. Training sessions in environments that are more realistic, more training, more applicable, where it really happens, kind of thing. And all of that has been a phenomenal thing for me.
Yeah.
And has helped my understanding of the martial arts, of the modern day application of what we're doing.
Yep.
Of training people and what people are like inside. Peeling back their layers to find out how I can get the most from them. And then doing that in the most realistic and effective and fastest route that we possibly can.
Right. I love that. How would you explain Undisputed Mastery? And keep it pretty short, but what is it, and why did you get involved in it?
Dr. Keith Wagner again had this program and invited us, my wife and I, to join him in this program. It is about bringing people together in an environment where we can discuss who we are at reality of who we are, become self-aware of the things that we're not happy with, bring them out on the table, examine them, dissect them, do it in a place where it's safe, because one of the ways you create safety and let them know, hey, it's okay for you to talk about what's wrong with you, is that I'm going to talk about what's wrong with me. And then you realize, well, everybody here is messed up. Yeah, exactly. And the only way we fix that is we cut it out and we dissect it and we figure out where it came from and how we're going to manage it. And then we got to give people some experiences. We got to give them a path to work through those things. It's not therapy. It's more like, hey, just take control of this. We can work around that. We can work through that. Here's how we're going to do that.
Right.
And then, people don't believe they can improve or be more. They still hear their dad's voice in the back of their head, or their ex-wife's voice in the back of their head, and that they kind of still believe that. But you put them through some real experiences where they struggle, they overcome fears, they face hardships, they do that, they develop real relationship with the people around them. And so then when they leave, they've got a real evidentiary procedure. You can go, yeah, I did that. And so when those voices in the back of your head go, yeah, but you're nothing, you go, no, I did that.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have the guts to do that. Yes, I do. I have the guts to stand up to that guy and get punched in the face and punch him in the face back. And if I can do those things, I can do these things. If I can do those hard things, I can do these hard things.
Right.
If I can face those fears, I can face these fears. And so you give them a pathway to do that, and they can literally change their lives.
I'd also say probably the biggest thing would probably be forming that tribe. And yeah, there's some people that do the event and you probably never see them ever again.
Yeah, there's
but forming that tribe, that family,
yeah,
is the most important thing. I know, like one of the videos I did with you, you were saying that if that guy is so tired he can't lift his arms up, there's going to be a tribe member right there and he will lift his arms up for him.
Yep, that's right.
So what does tribe mean to you?
Well, I mean, tribe is my life has to be more than just about me.
Yeah.
Right? My life has to be more than just making me more comfortable, making me more happy, making me more secure, making my life easier. So I need to realize that, in fact, that's not even important at all. What's really important is making that person safer, making that person more successful, helping uplift that person. And so when I do that with the people that are around me, then rising tide raises all boats. When I make you better and I make him better, you guys make us all better.
Yeah.
Right. And so we create a group of people that are all working towards a type of personal mastery. We're all invested in one another. We're all continue to invest in one another. We're all there when each other slips and falls, which is inevitable. And we all are walking the same path. Some people are just further down the road than others. But we're all facing the same fears. We're all, and it's very difficult to do alone, and it has very little purpose when you do alone.
Of course.
And so, but when you have a purpose of helping your brothers, helping people to become more, to do more, now all of a sudden you have a real purpose in your life.
Yeah.
That's got value, right? Helping that guy over that addiction, helping that guy through a divorce, helping that guy with the loss of a child. Now, those things have real value, and if I'm doing that, I have real value. That makes sense.
Of course.
My existence here isn't just wasted because it's selfish.
Yeah. Purpose is always something that's bigger than yourself.
Oh yeah.
And like that's what's truly fulfilling.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's not easy.
No.
It's not giving into that temporary pleasure.
Yeah.
It's going after that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in fact, now before you're very selfish, very self-oriented.
Yeah.
Everything is about me.
Yeah.
And so everything's geared towards getting more and doing more and having more. But as soon as I have this purpose over here, now I'm willing to sacrifice those things. I'm going to give him some of that.
Exactly.
And so now I expand. I become more capable because it's not about me. I'm now willing to sacrifice for my brothers. I'm willing to sacrifice for the mission, the larger cause of the tribe.
Yeah.
I'm willing to endure things that I wouldn't do for myself, but I want to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll get punched in the face for you. I'll carry this for you. I'll carry my load and part of your load. And a selfish person wouldn't do that. And so I become better as a man. And in the process of doing that, I become more of what I'm supposed to be. And so do the people around me. And they use that as an example. And then you're carrying part of his load and he's carrying part of her load. And all together we are helping people become more capable. That's what we mean by more capable, right? Not just more capable of violence. It's more capable. You're a better son, a better brother, a better father, a better boyfriend or husband. You're better at all of that.
Yeah. And, better for the tribe.
Yeah, better for the tribe in general. And if you don't do those things, and you consistently choose not to do those things and to do those repetitive patterns, then you get pushed out of the tribe. Right? Most of the time they just walk away from the tribe.
Yeah.
But if they don't self-select, they get selected. Right? Because now you become a cancer to the tribe. Right? And so you get self-selected or you get selected.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Cool. Here's a super deep question. Say if these next words were the last words you ever had. And you had one message for your tribe, for your family, for your friends, what would that message be?
That is a tough one right there. I would say continue to follow the word, continue to invest in each other, and the answers you seek are in training.
I love it, man. Cool. Well, I had a great time on this, and you're a huge mentor to me. I've had some amazing times with you. You've scared the absolute shit out of me a couple times, and I loved every second of it.
Great.
Yeah, so I look forward to the future experiences, and thank you so much for everything that you do for the men that you train, ORC, saving children's lives. Like, you're truly making an impact. So appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate it, man. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
brother. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Heck yeah.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.